And joining us in studio, we have Piet Olivier, legal researcher for the Helen Suzman Foundation, and Anton van der Merwe, a criminal lawyer, joins us on the line as well. Piet, always lovely having you. Good evening and welcome. I'll start with you, Anton. In terms of the legality, let's say with the judge's remarks on the characteristics or attributes of Mr. Ndlemeza, whether these are binding. In other words, where at the end of a judgment, the judge would say that he is regarded as dishonest or lacks integrity. Are these binding?
So you've got to keep in mind, and firstly, obviously, thank you for having me, but you've got to keep in mind that in a judgment by a judge, there's a distinction to be drawn between what his findings of fact are and what's called obiter dictum, which is just comments made during the judgment. Obviously, obiter is not binding on another court. The most it can do is it can have a persuasive element to any future courts. A finding of fact, however, should the court find that yes, he was dishonest, yes, his conduct was reprehensible, or whatever exactly the court finds, should it be a finding of fact, then yes, that should be binding on future courts.
All right, let's also invite Meelane Mkhabela, political analyst. But before then, Piet, just your reaction from the Helen Suzman Foundation on today's developments.
So, yeah, we have applied to court to get the appointment of Mr. Ndlemeza set aside. The reason being is because these two separate court judgments said that he was dishonest and he lacked integrity. Now, in South Africa, when someone is appointed, it's necessary for that appointment to be rational. And an appointment won't be rational if the appointing body, which in this case was the police minister, failed to consider relevant factors. And in this case, two judgments that said that Mr. Ndlemeza was dishonest and lacked integrity,
but these were
those
comments.
are very relevant.
They're remarks and comments or obiter dictum, as Anton van der Merwe was saying. So they weren't judgments as such, and they're not binding.
Whether or not they're obiter dicta or not, in this case, is beside the point. Obiter dicta is relevant to whether a subsequent court is bound by a previous court's pronouncements. Here we're not talking about whether or not a court is bound. We're talking about whether or not the minister, when he appointed Mr. Ndlemeza, had regard to those findings. And he was obliged to have regard to those findings, and he failed to do so. And that's why we maintain that the appointment is unlawful.